Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, Sigval here and welcome back to another video. In this one I'm going to try to do a guide for new players for Soul Raid, where first of all I'm going to try and answer all the questions that you might have, because I see them a lot in my comments. There's a certain set of questions that new players have about Soul Raids, though after they are answered, if you have any further questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I'm going to explain the whole Soul Raid artifact deal to you, and then I'm going to go into general tips of efficiently clearing soul raids and what to do if you're stuck. So yeah, with that being said, let's get into it with first of all answering the questions. First up, there is a limit on the soul raid, right? So what happens when this limit ends? Is this the end of the soul raid? Is never gonna come back? When it comes back, the progress resets? Well, when the soul raid expires, it's going to go away, and it's going to eventually come back. As far as a certain rotation of a soul raid and trying to predict what soul raid will be next is almost impossible, because there have been periods of time where they were in some sort of order, and then there have been periods of time where they were in absolutely no order, and this is kind of mixed in between, and it's very hard to predict this, so simply don't bother with it. But when the soul raid goes away, for example, and it comes back, what will happen? Well, it's a very simple matter. You have the bosses here, right? I have killed this normal tier Sub-Zero over here. When this soul raid comes back, this man is going to be dead. Everything else is going to be alive. Now, I don't have any damaged enemy bosses, but let's say I fought Blue Beetle, and for some reason I only dealt half his health damage. When the soul raid comes back, Blue Beetle is going to come back at full health, sadly. So it's simple. Anything you kill is going to stay dead. Anything you don't kill is going to be at full health when the soul raid comes back. Now, there's gonna be the normal difficulty and the heroic difficulties. With the heroic difficulties, there's gonna be 7 of them, as you can see by this thing, because you're going to get a profile picture when you finish all the way to heroic 7, for example. So it's going to be all the way to 7 heroics for each of the soul raids. Now, there's a huge difference in terms of the normal difficulty of the soul raids and the heroic difficulty of the soul raids, and we're going to go over that difference, or more likely those differences, because there's like, let's say 3 of them that are big. First of all, you're going to have a chest here that says it's going to give you a 3% chance for King Robin. The soul raids are going to have a featured chance for a legendary character, except for Dawn of Apocalypse, Rise of Krypton, and yeah, I think that's about it, except for those 2, which wouldn't even drop the best legendary characters. Like, if they drop legendary characters, they would literally be the worst legendary characters you can get from a soul raid, but they don't drop them, sadly. But other than that, each soul raid is going to have a normal difficulty at 3% chance. Now, as soon as you get to heroic difficulties, this chance is going to be increased. It's still going to be a 3-star character, so it's still going to be 200 shards, but it's going to be increased at 15% chance. So the chance is going to be higher, but at the same time, don't count on that chance, and don't have too high expectations, because personally I have 2 accounts, right? So I've been clearing the last contract soul raids a lot. I think on this account alone I went all the way to heroic 7 and I cleared it 4 times, and that goes into a point I'm going to go over in a second here. But I cleared this multiple times. I cleared it on the secondary account multiple times, and it was like, I think in total 18 chances, 50% chances to get Deathstroke, and I never got him. So you might be very lucky with this, you might be very unlucky with this. Now, as I said, this feeds into the last question, into the other question: what happens when you finish heroic 7 soul raid? Because this is the highest difficulty. What happens then? Well, you're going to be able to farm this. You're going to be able to reset at heroic 7 and keep farming it again and again and again. Another difference between normal difficulty and heroic difficulties is that there's no longer going to be gems. Gems are sadly going to be here only for normal difficulty, and after you're past this, you're no longer going to get gems for your progress. I guess that it's compensated by the increased legendary drop, but it isn't really. Okay, so next up, can you get more than 6 fights every 24 hours? No, you're limited to 6 fights every 24 hours, and look. Because of the rewards and the way the rewards scale, and this is another thing, that's not necessarily a difference between normal and heroics, but it's something that's going to steadily increase. The higher you're going to go into heroics, the more rewards you're going to get, and this is why I have this huge amount of credits. Like, when you see this, you're going to think, oh, this man is glitching the credits or is hacking. No, you literally get around 500,000 on average credits for each boss that you kill in Heroic. So you're literally going to farm credits faster than you're going to spend them. Same with gear materials, same with reforges. You're going to be at the point where you no longer see them as finite resources. You have more than you're going to need to spend. That's why it's very important to grind it, because you're going to escape the need of having those resources, because you're going to have more than you need. This is not necessarily a difference, but trying to explain the scaling system of it. And also a thing that scales is going to be the artifact fragments that you're going to get. Basically everything scales, but this is also important alongside those two things. This is the most useless thing you're going to get, is your artifact fragments, because you're not really going to need them too much. I don't even know why they're in the game anymore in here. But this is also going to scale, and you're going to use this to upgrade this artifact and the free artifacts that you're going to get. I'm going to go into the free artifacts in a second and explain the thing with the artifacts and what they do, but just as a general rule, if you only upgrade one of those artifacts and not put your resources into anything, by the time you finish Heroic 7, you most likely will have it at level 8 and will need further clears to further upgrade it to a higher level. So yeah, those are, and another big difference is that for some reason, and this is the dumbest thing in the world, all the bosses in normal difficulty are going to behave differently than the bosses in heroic difficulty. They're going to behave somewhat differently from the rest of the game, main difference being that they're not going to have any prerequisite to attacking you with specials. So in heroic difficulties, the enemy is going to be required to do a jump attack or hit you 3 times regardless of if you're blocking or not before trying to do a special. In normal difficulty, they're just gonna go for it, my dude. They're just gonna go for it and not care one bit. And it's a lot of other minuscule differences. You shouldn't really, I mean, you should be learning how to play the game normal difficulty, but you should be prepared to learn it again as you get to heroic 1 difficulty, because that's how 90% of the game is going to be, and that's how it's generally taught that it's a better, more efficient fighting system. So if you're having a hard time in normal difficulty with fighting the bosses, don't beat yourself up too much, because it's simply gonna get easier, funny enough, as you get to heroics in terms of the actual combats. And yeah, that's actually about it as far as the usual questions go. Now, if you have any further questions, yet again, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll answer them if I have time, or maybe other people will answer them for me. But yeah, now getting into the artifacts. Each story is going to have a couple of artifacts that you're going to get. The artifact that you see here is going to be the free artifact, so-called. Now, in theory, there is a chance to drop any artifact from the artifact set of that soul raid over here. But this chance is extremely small. It's amazingly small, to the point where it's unreliable to ever wish for an artifact that you don't see over here out of the artifact set, but only be grateful if you get it. This is mainly a pay-to-win feature, sadly, and most people are going to get them by spending real money. Now, I'm going to briefly explain all the artifacts that we have so far as free artifacts, so you know what to focus on using on your characters, and kind of what to try to finish to get at the very least the copy of this on normal. In heroics, you're going to get further copies of this artifact. Usually it's okay to keep 2 copies or 3 copies even, and then shatter everything for materials. Now, first of all, it's going to be the passive stats that you're going to get. Those passive stats are going to be applied to the entire team, and they're going to apply to each character individually. They're not going to be divided in between the teams, and you can test that out in terms of the health if you don't believe me, because there's a lot of misconception about this. A lot of people say that they split, they don't apply equally to each player. But if you count the health that your character has, and then you count the health that's added by those artifacts, then you're going to easily come to the conclusion that you're going to receive equally for each character. Now, there's one soul raid that doesn't do this, which is Dawn of Apocalypse, and it's the way it was released, and they just don't want to bother changing that. But except for Dawn of Apocalypse, the artifacts will split to the entire team. So usually the strategy is to always put on the 2 teammates, at the very least, artifacts that have passive bonuses for that soul raid specifically. After you get them, obviously, you're gonna have 2 of them if you don't get lucky and you don't drop any after finishing 2 heroics. But usually you want passive stats on 2 of your characters, and then on your damage dealer, an artifact that is damage focused and is better than that story-specific artifact, but does not provide passive stats. And I'm going to briefly explain each of the 3 artifacts now, and I'm going to begin with this. On this, I have the least information currently because I don't own it. We'll see how good this is as soon as we get it. It's going to be decently good by the fact that it adds bonus damage. It's going to be a decent amount of bonus damage that's added, but we simply have currently an artifact that does a better job than that. Now let's go over the other artifacts, and I'm going to tell you how mandatory they are, though except for one artifact, and that each one of the 3 artifacts is going to be mandatory in one way or another. So let's begin in order of the Soul Raid releases. Fatherbox. The Fatherbox artifact is going to be the artifact that you're going to get from Dawn of Apocalypse. It's going to give you a bit of damage on rush attacks, though that's useless, and it's going to give you some healing. That's good. It's going to remove negative effects applied to you. That's good, though it's not the reason why it's used. The reason why it's usually used is because of the teleportation on the rush attack, because this enables infinite combo on a lot of characters. Main one where it's used is Dr. Fate. So you do need to have this, but it's not like the highest priority artifact to get. It's good to have it, but I wouldn't really call it mandatory. Okay, let's move on to the next artifact, which is going to be the Kryptonite Spear. Kryptonite Spear is going to increase the maximum combo meter you can do when using specials, and it's going to heal you a bit. And this part is not mandatory because as far as healing goes, you're going to have better options for that. And as far as increasing your damage, this is just garbage. It's not going to give you that much damage. But the important thing is that you're going to be able to bypass reflective shields. Reflective shields are when the enemy has an ability where they make a shield appear in front of them, and it's going to reflect back the damage that you do to them. That's going to be able to bypass that, and it's going to be a very efficient way to do it. Now, there are other ways to do it, but this is going to be the most straightforward and most simple way to do it. So yet again, you should get this, but it's not the most mandatory thing. Next up, it's going to be... Do I even have a chakra artifact? Yes, I do. Thankfully, I didn't share it. This is the most useless artifact in the game. It's going to heal you a bit if you drop below a certain amount of health, and it's going to give you a bit of damage. The damage part of it is bad. The healing part of it is bad. We have artifacts that heal you more, and we have artifacts that give you more damage. The only reason why you would want this is for the passive stat side of it in that Soul Raid specifically. So don't worry about it too much. Though again, you should progress in Advent of Chaos as well, but the artifacts are not going to be the most mandatory thing. Next up, we have the God Killer. The God Killer is going to be in the last contract and is going to give you a bit of damage depending on the enemy's attack. You're basically going to steal some of the enemy boss's attack, which is going to be fine, though not the selling point of this artifact. And then the selling point of this artifact is going to be the fact that it's going to give you a chance to disable the enemy's block on swipes. Works on swipe right, works on swipe down. What this is going to do is basically enable you to infinite combo the enemy and keep them pinned in the corner. You can put this on the damage dealer if you want some smooth gameplay, though the damage is not going to be the best. Or you can put this on the combo builder if you also want some smooth gameplay without bothering to combo and chop. This is a good artifact, and I would say you should get this. Again, not the highest priority artifact still, but you should really have this. It's going to help you out a lot if you do have it. Next up, we're going to have a Dark Mel card. Where is it? I think I had it. Oh, it's equipped actually. That's why I couldn't find it. So the Dark Mel card is going to be a must-have artifact. You have to have this artifact. For some teams, it's going to be the best damage dealing artifact. For some teams. For other teams, it's going to be the Crown of Conduct. But the Crown of Conduct, which we're going to talk about later in the Dark Mel cards, are going to be the main 2 artifacts you're going to use for dealing damage. And it's going to give you some crit damage, and it's going to bypass the crit damage cap. Now, a brief explanation about that. You see how King has 470 crit damage, can go all the way up to 500, but I didn't bother here. This normally goes only to 300%, no matter if you put more on the gears or not. But this artifact is going to break that and allow you to go all the way to 500%. And it actually works to put additional crit damage on gears if you don't have it at level 10. Because at level 10 it will put you at maximum without putting anything on the gears, but you can compensate for that by putting crit damage on the gears. And crit damage is going to be a very, very good thing when it comes to dealing damage. On top of that, it's going to spawn an area that guarantees crits if the enemy is not crit resistant or crit resistant. Even if they're crit resistant, it's going to still guarantee crits, and it's going to give you a chance to ignore crit immunity. Because of the ignore crit immunity is also a very, very strong artifact. So because of the damage and the crit immunity, this is one of the highest priority artifacts in the game that you should get. Next up, we have, I think, Nora Snow Globe. There it is. So Nora Snow Globe is going to give you some healing after each special performed, and as I said with the Kryptonite Spear, that we have a more optimal artifact in terms of healing, this is it. So you can put it on a, let's say, a Raven, so that she heals herself constantly. You're going to get a bit of attack whenever you perform a special, which is not going to be good. This amount of attack that you're getting is bad. This is not an artifact for dealing damage in that way at the very least. Now, the interesting part about this thing is going to be the fact that you're going to get some clones spawned whenever your character dies. And those clones are not going to keep the main character passive, but they're going to keep their abilities. So by that, you're going to, for Kim-Flant Sakomen or Deathstroke, be able to do percentage health damage with the clones as well, which is something that's very important for soul raids. And we're going to get into that in a second. Maybe I should have talked about percentage health damage and those characters at the start, but we'll talk about that as well. So this artifact is going to basically double, if not triple, the damage of your Deathstroke and Kim-Flant Sakomen. It's an absolutely amazing artifact. You should get it as soon as possible. And after On Ice Soul Raid, I think the only other Soul Raids that we need to talk about, except for the new Soul Raid that I talked about at the start with the artifact, is going to be the Crown of Conduct. The Crown of Conduct is going to give you a lot of damage as soon as you spend power bars, and it's a huge amount of damage. As I said, for some teams we have Dark Metal cards, for other teams we have Crown of Conduct. It's going to be one of the two best free-to-play artifacts as far as dealing damage goes, so get this as soon as possible. Also, it's going to give you a chance to refund your special cost if you are above a certain combo meter, which is also going to be pretty damn great. So also very good artifact, very strong artifact, very straightforward artifact. Get it as soon as you're able to. Now, as far as, I guess, the characters kind of fit in some general tips. At the start of the game, you're not going to have access to a lot of characters, and you might find it hard to have the amount of themes. Also on the differences. I talked about the differences in normal and heroics. In normal, you're going to be able to use the same theme 6 times a day. It doesn't matter. You can use the characters as many times as you want. In heroic difficulty, however, you can only use one character once every 24 hours. So it means that I can use my Kim-Flant Sakomen team with Kim-Flant Sakomen, let's say Dr. Fate and Shazam, why not? Only once. After I have done that, they're not going to be usable anymore until the fights refresh. So you're going to need kind of 6 themes, which is going to be something that you might struggle with, but just put some stuff in there that seems to deal damage and go with it. Every single bit of progress counts, and eventually you're going to get to the point where you have enough themes. Now, a few characters that are going to tremendously boost your progress. First of all is Kim-Flant Sakomen. It's going to be in the League store, so join the League and try to get him from there. It's going to be in the daily rewards, so you should not count on that alone. And this man is so strong because he's going to be a good damage dealer himself. And at the same time, he's going to deal percentage hull damage. Percentage hull damage is simple. It literally says here, 10% of the opponent's current health. And that might not be much in normal difficulty when the opponent has 400k health in total. You might deal more damage with the normal damage of this than you deal with the percentage hull damage of this. But as soon as you get into heroics, the health of the enemy boss is going to increase. And you're going to get to the point where this thing alone is going to deal somewhere like 200 mil damage per single use. With King can be 3 stars. King can have no gears equipped, and this is still going to be a thing that's a staple here. and you add a Nora Snow Globe on top of it, and you can get a 3-star king with no gears, as long as you don't die, obviously, as long as you play it properly, to do 1.4 billion damage when the enemy health is going to be 2 billion. So percentage hull damage is very good and you should look for that. Now, sadly, except for king, most characters that have percentage hull damage are going to be legendary characters. Though if you wait for a sale and unlock them, they're going to be very good for you, as you only need most of them at 3 stars. Zatanna is currently bugged and she's bonkers, but even if she gets fixed, she's good because she's got some percentage hull damage. It's on a passive, so will not work with Nora Snow Globe. Deathstroke, this should be your first priority as a new player. Unlock Deathstroke above anything else, because this man has a lot of percentage hull damage on his specials, and is also going to work with Nora Snow Globe. So yet again, 3-star Deathstroke, no gears, is going to go all the way to 1.4 billion damage, excuse me. So yeah, that's kind of about it. Now for some general tips as far as the progression goes. So this is stuff that you're going to figure out yourself, though I might tell you right now. So you don't have to go through the process of figuring it out yourself and do mistakes. You're going to have a few bosses over here. First of all, a mistake that I do to this day, read the damn boss description, because you're going to get in a fight. You're going to get with your character, that's a might character, and you're going to see that the enemy disables gears for might characters. You're going to get with your character in there that relies on lethal attack damage, and the enemy is going to be ready to resist, and you're going to do no damage. And it's going to be written there, staring at you when you get out of the fight and you did no damage, and you know it's going to be your fault. Read the description of the bosses. Next up, let's say clear all those 3 guys. I don't know what Swamp Thing does because it's a new soul raid, but let's say Swamp Thing was stun immune. And my only team available, let's say this was heroic difficulty where I could use teams only once. Let's say my only available team was League of Anarchy, which relies on stuns. You could use League of Anarchy against him and have a harder time, or you could just go to the next tier. Because every single time you feel like you don't have the optimal team left to tackle the final boss, or you're just a bit stuck against the final boss, you can still advance. Because as you can see over here, you need to defeat 8 bosses to unlock this tier. And you need to defeat 12 bosses to unlock this tier. So in theory, until you get all the way to this tier, which requires 20 bosses, which is pretty much all of them, until you get to that tier, you can have all the bosses unlocked and undamaged. Because all you need to do to unlock this tier, for example, is defeat all the sub-bosses in the first 3 tiers. So please do keep that in mind. And yeah, I think that's about it. Good luck in soul raids, lads. Make sure you farm them because they are the most optimal way to get resources in this game. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe if you did, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!